be available. So there's also a discussion happening about a possible interim condition, building a portion of that. So in the slide I have shown that the red would be the earthen channel, which would convey most of the floodwaters beyond the residential communities. And the discussion is still hammering out a potential interim condition. Well, with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
How much was the basin impacted through these last rains?
The Public Works Department did an outstanding job in keeping those waters under control with pumping. I think recently they installed 3 manually operated pumps to pump basin water into the adjacent vacant field. And they coordinated with fire just to ensure public safety was at the utmost.
Michael, did you have a question?
I do. I have one more comment. I just want to thank you for this update. Mm-hmm. Do you know what kind of a time frame we're looking to be able to move forward with getting a temporary fix or the Line D portion of it?
Sure.
At least, so that way we don't have to continue to do the manual pumping, which I want to thank staff for doing that because it greatly reduced the impact that it had on traffic by undergrounding those pipes to be able to move that water. So thank you to staff for that.
Yeah, they did a good job. I don't have an answer for you on the estimated time for Line D. That there's still a lot of parts moving into position. If it's okay, I'll research it a little bit further and get back to you.
That'd be great.
Yeah. I just have one question. Sure. When you talk about the lines, that's undergrounding. That flood control is undergrounded, or it's not open?
It's a mix. So initially, out of the basin will be a reinforced concrete box to take it under Costin in what's currently vacant land now, and immediately it'll turn into an open conveyance, a dirt channel, and it'll remain a dirt channel all the way south along Costin and then west along Devonshire, pretty much to the Ramona Creek track, and then there it'll go underground until it goes into the basin, which is the revised Devonshire Basin. It'll remain, so that it'll be open in the basin, and then it'll return to an underground pipe and be piped under Warren Road, south of Florida, until it again returns to open conveyance, and it'll be a level spreader that takes that concentrated flow and makes it a little bit more natural.
So when it gets down south of Florida, does that go on Habitat property, onto RCA, on the west side of Warren, or on the east side of Warren?
I think they are trying to avoid all of the sensitive areas.
But it should go over there, because that's the only time fairy shrimp appears, when there's water.
Well, I believe that the final, in this scope, the final destination is a vernal pool.
See, I knew I'd pull somebody else up on that one.
And Robert's doing an excellent job, but he hasn't been here as long to all the complexities.
It's rainfall or sheet flow that
yeah, as it exits the Ramona Creek system and goes underground, there's a portion that is sheet flowing across, or designed to sheet flow across the vernal pools for the rehydration in the conservation areas. And there's also a portion that will be channelized along Warren Road. So there's 2 systems that are going to be operational eventually to Salt Creek Channel.
That's what I was going to ask, if the destination was Salt Creek Channel over there. Okay, thank you. And this presentation is great. It really is. Thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you.
I do have a question about the proposed flow and direction, and Deanna, you might need to address this. So I understand it's an open channel, and then it will go underneath Devonshire into what's currently vacant land that's being farmed right now, south of Devonshire. And in the image, it looks like that's just open and spreading there until it gets to the concrete conduit that's going to take it south along Warren and south of Florida.
It's currently designed in this graphic here, when it's underground under Costin, and then what you see is that red line, which goes down adjacent to Costin and then adjacent to Devonshire. That would be a soft bottom channel. So I think it's riprap sides and a trail system. That's part of the Tres Cerritos development. Then it'll go under Myers again, before it exits into the open drainage basin in Ramona Creek. Then we'll go underground again as it hits Warren under Florida.
So I know that in the past there's been a couple of development proposals for that large parcel there. Has this plan always been incorporated into those development plans?
So just as an aside, so the big piece there that's the Tres Cerritos, which is the vacant land that it's currently outlining, that specific plan was approved several years ago, and if that plan advances prior to Ramona Creek, which is kind of the ultimate solution, then there would be an interim detention basin at the corner of Myers and Devonshire. So that open channel would then have a temporary basin that just allowed them to move forward. If Ramona Creek goes first, then when this piece, intervening piece, they'll tie directly into Ramona Creek. So part of what the steps in securing the funding with Riverside County Flood Control was to engage them on solving the Seattle Basin and obtaining those funds, so that instead of waiting for development to happen, that we could have this whole system constructed sooner to meet our current needs, but ultimately would allow for both of those major developments to move forward.
Yeah, that was my main concern, that we're coordinating
Right.
both objectives, the future development and also the flood control component. And currently, the project that Caltrans has going on at Warren in Florida with their repairs, they had asked us to hold off on diverting anything because ultimately it goes to the culverts that they're working on. So they had asked us to hold back on that. So I echo the comments already acknowledging staff's work on that, because it's kind of the devil's in the details. You know, we've got to get it diverted out of Seattle Basin, and so it doesn't impact our city, but we're also trying to be mindful of Caltrans' request not to funnel it into the project that they're working on. So it was an accomplished task, I guess, with the rainstorms that we had. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for the update. Appreciate it. And now going on to item 12, Stetson Bridge Replacement Project Update. This will be great because every week people are still saying on Facebook, questioning why we have a stop sign there, and some of the answers are quite entertaining, I'll tell you.
Especially on social media.
Yeah, on social media for sure.
Thank you so much. All right, this is the project update for Stetson Bridge replacement. All right, Stetson Bridge is immediately south of Hemet Ryan Airport, east or west of Sanderson Avenue, and east of Warren Road. Several years ago, Caltrans identified the bridge to be in poor condition. The city obtained a Highway Bridge Program grant for $955,000. Again, Michael Baker International, MBI, was retained to evaluate and conduct routine inspections. They also were retained to perform the final engineering for this bridge. As part of their routine inspections, they identified several repairs that needed to happen relatively quickly. Public Works, again, performed well and repaired the bridge. Several of the repairs were to the structural timber members. They added steel plates to an existing wood plank deck. Also a lot of traffic control devices. This project will replace about 32 feet of existing timber bridge and replace it with roughly 133 feet of 2 reinforced concrete box culverts. The top of the box culvert will also serve as the roadbed for the roadway. In addition to that, several traffic improvements will be constructed as well. Signing, striping, also stream bed protection will be a part of this project.
Will there be any straightening? Really? I mean, it's going to make it worse. It's been like long ago.
So as of April of last year, the final design phase was completed. All regulatory agency permits are obtained. And we are currently working with Caltrans to obtain authorization to proceed with advertisement. However, as part of the requirements of this grant, we cannot proceed without that advertisement. And we are expecting that authorization, we cannot proceed without the authorization from Caltrans. And we're expecting that by the end of January, but it should be end of January, beginning of February. The initial estimate that was provided in 2012 was $955,000. A more recent estimate came in at $1,575,000, which creates a $620,000 shortfall. So engineering staff has been in talks with Caltrans about additional funding. Tentatively, they've agreed, and some of our initial understanding is it'll have a reimbursement rate of 88.53%. So that'll provide an additional $549,000 of grant funding with a $71,000 local match funding requirement. All right, at this time, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Benefit of the public, would you state the reason why there's a stop sign there now?
Sure.
Thank you.
The stop sign acts as twofold. One, if the bridge was to fail immediately, the stop sign prevents you from severe damage, I guess, more severe damage, by keeping your velocity relatively slow. Also, it protects the bridge from dynamic loading of the heavy trucks bouncing, the effects of tires braking on it at a high acceleration or a higher rate of travel. And it's just fun to put a stop sign in the middle of a road. I'm sorry. I was just joking. That is not the reason. Yeah, that is not the case, though.
Thank you for that.
I'm sorry about that.
And for the update, because there's been an awful lot of dialogue on social media about that particular area and why it's there and what's happening to it. So I appreciate the update. Anybody else have a question?
And this is probably more a question for legal. if the bridge were to fail prior to Caltrans getting their act together and approving this additional funding, who is liable for any damages incurred?
I'd really rather not answer that question at this point in time.
Then I'll take the question back. Well, I'm thinking if Caltrans is delaying the project, which on a bridge that has been deemed dangerous, and they keep asking for additional information. I heard that. It just sounds like typical Caltrans. I can't use that next word in public.
All correct.
So I have a question for you, Mr. City. There's been a lot of talk lately in the media about state of emergency. Could this bridge project and the condition that it's in constitute an emergency to get the road work done more expeditedly?
I'm not sure what Caltrans' definition of emergency is, but if our structural and traffic engineer indicated that it was urgent, it is pretty urgent, we have to limit the amount of traffic that goes through there and make people stop before they go on. It might be something to consider. I don't have Caltrans' own manual as to what they consider to be an emergency in my mind, so.
Well, they're deeming the median on Florida Avenue a safety project. I think this is more of a bigger safety issue.
Clearly a safety project, whether it's something that expedites it ahead of the line.
So they can do a safety project and be exempt from everything. We're doing a safety project and we've got to beg for their mercy.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments for Robert? Good job.
Thank you. All right, thank you for your time.
Moving on to city council reports. Councilmember Krupa. Okay, Michael, I'm going to take the next 45 minutes. Okay. On RCTC, at our last board meeting, several things that were approved may or may not impact us. Some of it does. Anyway, we approved, RCTC approved the relocation of a brine line along the State Route 91 corridor improvement plan.
They did?
Yes, we did. Working in conjunction with the Santa Ana watershed project. Approved the environmental document phase for Interstate 15 Express Lanes project with the southern extension, which is from Cajalco. It's over in that area, south of Corona. And also approved the contract management phase and project funding, environmental mitigation and construction agreement for State Route 60 truck lanes. They're really looking to push that along and to get it started sometime this spring and have it finished by February of 2021, I believe it is. So it's going to go extremely quickly once it gets started. The rest of these are going through. The library board had the meeting last Friday. Our deputy city manager attended the meeting, which was very good. And several things about the library. One is that this Thursday, day after tomorrow, beginning at 6:30 p.m. upstairs at the library, Colin Karchner will be doing a presentation. He's an internet crusader and youth advocate. It's called Save the Kids. It is all about inspiring youth to rise above the harmful effects, such as anxiety and depression, of social media and screen time that can come from social media comparison, cyberbullying, and 24/7 access to peer culture on their devices. This is being sponsored by Hemet High School, Dartmouth, and Acacia Middle School's ASB in connection with the library. So I think it's going to be a very informative evening. And also at the library Saturday before, the second annual Get Your Comics On had over 700 people attend that function. It was really exciting. It was very, very, very exciting. And the original Hemet News, as some of us knew it, has been inputted so that it's now up to, you can access copies from the inception, which was, God on my nose, 18-something.
Oh, here, I thought you were going to tell me it was coming back.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? Oh, yes. Anyway, it's up, they have the newspaper up to 1958. And I had one other thing I was going to, there it is. And both the Friends and the Foundation, Friends of the Library and the Hemet Library Foundation have both each contributed $5,500 towards the summer reading program. So they've got their $12,000, is that $12,000? $11,000 necessary to put on the summer reading program. And I think that's it. But the library is alive and well. And, one more thing. Sorry about that. The Assistance League is having their Action Week for Literacy at the library. Their Action Week is from February 25th to March 1st. But on January 30th, Wednesday at 2 p.m., they're doing Hands Around the Library, and they're inviting as many children as possible from the schools to come down and actually form a human chain of people around the Hands Around the Library. And this is an effort to raise 1,000 new books to be distributed to students K through 8 in the Valley, and it's called Donate a New Book. So it's going to be a good fundraiser, not only at the library, but through the Assistance League. And now I'm done.
Okay, Councilmember Meyer.
Most importantly, we have our, like Susan said already, at Valley Restart tomorrow, we have our point in time count training. It's 1:30 at Valley Restart tomorrow. You have to participate in the training in order to participate the day of the count on Tuesday, January 29th. So I encourage any of you that want to do that to come to the class tomorrow. If you can't make the class tomorrow, there's other classes that are not too far from here. If you want to contact me, there's a pretty good showing for Hemet. So I'm impressed with all the volunteers that we've gotten together. So that's very important. So if anybody wants to do it, call me or come to Valley Restart tomorrow. Also, we had our first Investment Oversight Committee meeting. It was last week, and the next meeting will be, it was good. We went over different investment things that we were working on. We initiated our RFQ for our investment advisor, and then so we'll go over that at the next meeting. It is a public meeting. The next meeting is Wednesday, February 20th at 1 p.m. It's at City Hall upstairs, so everybody is welcome to come. And the regular meetings will be the third Monday at 1 p.m. But that's a holiday, this next one. So put that on your calendars. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilmember Percival.
Okay, so Friday I was up in Sacramento for the League of Cities policy committee that I was on for revenue and taxation. First and foremost, we had a presentation from Ana Matos Santos, who was just appointed by newly elected Governor Newsom as his cabinet secretary. She worked in finance, in the Department of Finance under Governor Brown and Governor Schwarzenegger before her appointment by Newsom. Being in this committee, I can tell you, is very, it was frustrating for my first meeting because a lot of the cities that were there that were being represented on this policy committee, they talked about different ways to tax more. One of the things that we did talk about was, or that Anna talked about was Governor Newsom's going to be very hawkish on housing. He's already talking about diverting or tying SB1 funding to housing. So when people say, I don't trust Sacramento with money, that's because they don't, if you vote for it to go to one thing, it will always get diverted, and they're already trying to divert SB1 funding away from roads and potholes to housing. So that was one of the things that she touched on. a couple bills to, that are going to be, that would be beneficial to cities. When the 4 new cities in Riverside County incorporated, their vehicle license funding fees were taken in for the city of, I think, Wildemar. That contributed 25% of their budget. So that money then was tied back to SB1 to get SB1 passed. Well, there's a new bill that's being brought forward this year that will expand that, so not just to the 4 new cities, but it'll expand it beyond. So if any other cities in any other areas decide to incorporate, they won't lose that vehicle license fee.
Do you know what that bill was?
I want to say it's SB 85. The 2 bills that we talked about were SB 85 and AB 213, both tied to incorporation and annexation. So the other bill, which is 213, AB 213, talks about annexation, so that is tied to incorporation and expansion of cities. So cities that are looking to annex more unincorporated land, currently the vehicle license fee won't come to the city as part of that annexation. It would still go to the state. So there's a bill that the league is trying to get behind, well, that will be getting behind, that will allow, as cities expand and annex more land, that the VLF fees will then come back to the city. So there was discussion from one of the Bay Area cities talking about a head tax. Apparently they do it in Seattle, and the Bay Area cities, and I think one of the impacts of the $15 an hour minimum wage was that San Francisco was starting to see businesses leave the city and go into the cheaper suburban cities of San Francisco, which is not really suburban because it's all urban up there. But those cities are talking about, they brought up a head tax. The cities that were represented from Southern California, we said, hey, you guys stop talking about that now, because we can tell you that the cities in Southern California will not be for it. So those are some things that came out of revenue and taxation. So so when I got there, and the first thing we started talking about, all I could say was, thanks, Linda, for putting me on this committee. All I want to do is pull out the hair I don't have. That's all I have.
Councilmember Brown. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, forgot your song.
The League of California Cities General Meeting was held in Eastville on the 14th, and that was a very well attended event and gave Eastville a chance to kind of showcase their new community building, and we had a chance to hear from the newly elected sheriff and talked about things that are happening with the new sheriff in town, and there's some changes happening and some turnover of some of the contract cities who's going to be in the role of their police chief. So stay tuned for more coming out of the sheriff's department. On the 16th, I was able to attend the farewell retirement luncheon for Randy Record, who retired after many years of service with Metropolitan Water District, and they had a nice video montage. He's probably one of the most underspoken persons that I've ever had the occasion to meet, but he definitely was very well respected for his accomplishments and the leadership that he demonstrated in that role. And I suspect that after a period of time that we haven't seen the last of Mr. Record. He'll be involved in something downstream. Was able to attend about half of these and Michael was there too. it's such an uplifting opportunity to see with all of the negative stuff that you hear on the media about the youth. It's so uplifting to see the positive, engaging prospects of our youth, and I'm so glad that both school districts, San Anselmo and Hemet, are actively involved in that. It's just a very positive experience. And also later that day, I went to a Diamond Valley Lake Emergency Action Plan meeting that was hosted by our city and organized by our Emergency Services Coordinator. And there were good representation of the city. We had fire and police representatives there, and our ESC and Public Works in attendance, and Riverside County Emergency Management Department was represented, and there were 5 representatives from Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. And what they were doing is reviewing their draft emergency action plan for a breach of the dam. Primarily their focus was on a breach of the eastern dam, because if there were to be a breach on the western, the inundation map indicates that nothing would be impacting our jurisdiction. So the focus of that discussion was all on the eastern side. They did provide a draft emergency action plan, and that was provided to the police department. So they have that on site. It's not available for public release just yet, but as soon as it's been approved, and this is all to bring everything in compliance with SB 92 that was enacted in June 17th, that requires an emergency action plan for all jurisdictions. And the inundation maps were submitted on schedule in December of 2017, and so things are moving forward on that. It was a good, healthy discussion, and everybody kind of had their minds put at ease about the potential impact of that. And
Planning Commission, lively discussion about the street vendors, the ruling that came into effect in this month, right, Deanna? About being able to, street vendors being able to street vend anywhere they want to, practically. So this is really of great concern to the city, of course, because we've always banned that, and now, of course, it's law that they're allowed. So we you want to talk about the ordinance that we put in? Okay, just quickly.
At your last meeting, the city adopted an urgency ordinance to regulate to the maximum extent that state law now allows us to street vendors. State law requires us to allow street vendors to vend in public parks and on public streets, sidewalks and other public areas. We've imposed limitations designed to protect public safety, public access. They are supposed to get a permit, not only from the city. They're supposed to have a health permit, and they're supposed to have a permit from the state. However, that would require the city to run out to all of the vendors and track down and make sure that they have all of that. So the state doesn't provide any funding for our local enforcement mechanism. We are currently undergoing a process, city staff, to relook at the urgency ordinance. It's just a placeholder to see if we have some refinements, and maybe to get a month or two under our belt to see where the problem areas lie, what kind of permits we're getting, what kind of enforcement problems there are, so we can come back with some solutions for it.
Great, thank you. Deanna also that evening provided a 2018 recap, which was quite interesting. I'm just say a few things, like 58 new businesses 18 zoning ordinances, and mention that property tax valuation is up 9%. Right? So that was all good. That was good things to hear. I attended the President's Gala for the Ramona Bowl on Saturday night, and Linda was there as well. And I want to thank both Russ and Michael for attending the Student of the Month. That's something I can't attend. It's in the morning, but I start work at 6:30 in the morning. So it's, unless I'm off that day, I can't ever attend, and it's something that I wish I could. But I certainly appreciate your participation in that, because it's so important. And if any of the other council members can do that too, that would be terrific. So, oh, that's great. Okay. Homeless Task Force is next week, and Linda and I both attended the homelessness in the Watershed Conference that was on Thursday through, we should have got a medal for just getting through all the rain to get there. It was in San Bernardino. But it was very well attended, and we had the opportunity to speak with Chuck Washington's office on a sidebar, which was very beneficial. And we appreciate them now coming to our task force meetings now and actually attending the meeting. We really appreciate that. On the Skate Plaza Task Force, we're kind of regrouping on that. Now, the end of the year is over, and it's time to regroup, mainly because I mentioned before that the developer we worked with went on to another company, and so it's time to regroup and keep that project going. Okay, next, ad hoc committee reports. Florida Avenue Ad hoc Committee, that's Linda and I, that was established last meeting, and so we'll be meeting on that probably within the next couple of weeks. CBG Ad hoc Committee, Percival Brown. Okay. And Budget Ad hoc Committee, that's scheduled for the 28th, is that correct?
We're no longer an ad hoc committee. It's an investment oversight committee, and we already reported.
This is the different one. This is the budget.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Then we need to schedule a meeting, I suppose.
Okay, this is separate from the investment. Okay, and this is to work with staff on the budget, on the upcoming budget. So that's next Monday. City Manager?
I have received a communication, a telephone call from a representative of the California Traffic Commission regarding our letter that we sent to them requesting a meeting regarding the median strip, and just wanted to verify that we indeed were asking for a meeting, which I verified.
It's in black and white.
Yeah, I know. So that's it for me.
Future agenda items. Anybody have future agenda items?
Yes.
I know Deanna did a presentation, I believe, to Planning Commission on Measure Z about cannabis.
Oh, yeah, I
and the
forgot to mention that one.
Citizens Committee to look into what Hammett is planning to do so that we get our ducks in a row before January of 2021. 2020? Yeah, good eyesight. And I would like to have maybe that presentation for council and a discussion on what we do now, because that deadline is going to be upon us before we can blink. So if possible, I'd like to have that on the next council meeting.
You want his involved in that discussion?
Michael wants to go home. I don't know. I would say that staff should figure that out. My concern is, how are we going to go forward? How are we going to formulate the Citizens Committee, and who's going to give us input, professional
input, especially now that delivery is definitely legal in every city in California, and we don't have any recourse on that one at this point. So I think we just need to get going forward and do it now. So, yeah, your call.
Anybody else?
I might added one last time before I left. It didn't make it on here, but we need to look into our vagrancy and panhandling laws to strengthen them.
Okay.
And I just have, I guess, somewhat of a procedural question, kind of looking for direction on how to proceed. I'm liaison to a couple of commissions that aren't really in existence. One is the Emergency Preparedness Commission, and the other is Traffic and Parking. So I've had some preliminary discussions with our fire chief about the emergency preparedness, and what I'm planning to do is sit down and brainstorm with police and fire and our emergency services coordinator to kind of get some idea of what their thoughts are on how that commission could be resurrected and be beneficial and provide some meaningful input to our processes and activities.
Can I add to that before you go on to your next one? And I think that's a very, very good idea. We actually have, by resolution or whatever action we took several years ago, and created the Citizens Commission of this thing, which turned out to be the most unwieldy, unenforceable, unmanageable thing that I think we've probably ever done. It wasn't my idea. And I think that needs to be brought back. Do your homework and your due diligence and bring something back to council that we could enact that would make sense in emergency and disaster preparedness, because what we currently have as a council is unworkable. So thank you for doing that.
And along those lines, the Traffic and Parking Commission, I guess my thought is that there's a potential for some good benefit to have a commission that could serve as a clearinghouse for citizen concerns about traffic needs and traffic circulation problems. And so, and I had a brief discussion with Robert this evening already, and we're going to get together and talk about things that we can do. So, as a matter of procedure, what would be the council's preference on bringing those brainstorming results back to council? Just do it in the council reports for now, and then see where we need to go.
I think council reports are good, and then as you get into a little bit further, especially with the emergency disaster preparedness, provide an update, a more thorough update, with staff, and
Okay.
go forward from there.
All right.
But I agree with you on parking and traffic and parking, because it used to meet regularly, and it's probably been a couple of years since it's met.
Yeah. I was on traffic and parking before I got elected. And I would say one of the main reasons why it has not met on a regular basis is the lack of a city engineer. Because that's the city engineer's job, and while we haven't had one, why have a meeting when nobody knows anything about it? So, anyway, city engineer needs something more to do. Oh, he's still here.
Okay, moving on.
One thing, Lynn and I don't have any meetings for the budget ad hoc committee on our calendars, so just let us know.
This is different.
The ad hoc committee is Councilmember Rupa and Mayor Bright, and they're scheduled to meet on Monday.
Oh, okay.
Remember, Linda, because you said you couldn't do it in the time when you thought, yeah, on the 28th. Okay, I'll adjourn this meeting to Tuesday, February 12th at 7 p.m. And I hope everyone has a great week. What? Already asked her.